Hey guys, welcome back to 5-Minute Effects. Today we're going to be talking about fracturing, the different types of techniques that I use for fracturing. There's two main ones, Voronoi and Boolean. We're going to go into details of how to create cutting pieces or cell points, how to fracture things, how to do Booleans and Voronois, how to noise things, add extra detail, the benefits and pitfalls of each one. Hopefully you'll get some more insight and be able to make more natural fractures and more considered fractures for a more natural look and a better detail to your sims. Alrighty, let's get going. I want to just chat a little bit about the new tools in 17.5. If I drop a geo node down, you can see if I go fracture, we've got a bunch of different options. We've got Boolean fracture, we've got Voronoi fracture, and we've got material fracture. These nodes are basically wrappers for the concepts that I'm going to show you in a minute. So for example, the Boolean fracture will handle the interior faces and give you all your groups and everything all nicely wrapped, but it's always good to understand the theory behind something so that when you use the wrapper, you know what all the buttons do and all the checkboxes and everything. Material fracture is basically either Voronoi or Boolean fracture. So Boolean inside has got a Boolean node, there it is, set to shatter, and then it's doing a whole bunch of other little techniques and things. Voronoi fracture is doing the same, so it's got a Voronoi split node, and then it's got things like setting normals and all that other kind of stuff. And material fracture is basically using these concepts inside of these fractures. So if you'll see in recursive fracture, you'll probably dive deep enough. Yeah, so here's the Voronoi fracture here. Yeah, so the wood one will use a Boolean fracture. Well, that makes more sense. So essentially, this is wrapping various pieces of these into one super tool so that you can say, oh, concrete, glass, or wood. So yeah, if you're going to do specific materials and you like this, I mean, by all means, it's got chipping things in here, adding edge detail. It's pretty heavy, but I mean, it's pretty good if you're just going to drop something down, you want to fracture it, something pretty custom, and then get it out. Generally in production houses you'll have wrappers for these, either that or you'll just have to build a whole bunch of custom wrangles and things to handle pieces and also handle constraints and all that kind of stuff. So you'll probably use this mainly, but you will definitely add more custom functionality before or after this. So I'm going to kill this and then I'm going to show you Squab. I like Squab because it's got a lot of little tentacle things, and it's got a separate eye and different sizes and shapes of things, which will help you get a better understanding of how the fracture works. And it's better to explain and try and show you some of the pitfalls in fracturing. So first off, let's do a Voronoi. Scatter some points. Let's just scatter 100 quickly, and then we're going to drop down a Voronoi. Throw that in there, fracture, piece coming out, and then let's do exploded view and you'll see what's going on. Whoop. So essentially what's happening here is it's using that scattered point and then it's measuring the distance between the nearest scattered point and drawing a line, and then it does that for all the neighboring ones, and when it has that line it creates a shape and then extrudes that inside based on the distance to the next point, and you get all these pieces inside and all that. And that's all very well if you just want to drop something and it looks like these chunks, and it'll work just fine. Bullet likes Voronoi fractures the most because there are convex hulls. When they go into the Bullet solver, they convert it into convex hulls quite nicely, and Bullet understands them. You get less errors and stuff like that. That being said, if I add extra internal detail or maybe I noise things up a bit, then the convex hull starts to break, and then you have to do a bunch of other little tricks to get it more optimized. So that's Voronoi. Now, for example, say I wanted more pieces in the middle. So right now you can see that it's got one piece here and then a bit in the middle, one piece here and then a bit on the edge and then a bit in the middle. But say I wanted lots of little pieces in the middle. The best way to do this, and what I'll usually do if I'm fracturing something, is you create a volume and then scatter points inside it. I usually use VDB to polygons because VDBs are a little faster than the standard ISO offset. And a little bit more efficient. So let's do that. Let's create a VDB from polygons. I don't want distance VDB, I want a fog because it's going to give me detail inside. I'll show you what I mean. So now you can see there's volume going all the way through, and if I scatter with this now, instead of getting a shell, I'm going to get something inside. You can see there's pieces inside here. That is what we want, and then we fracture this now. A lot more pieces in the center, and a lot more pieces that will, in your rigid body sim, will start to break off. And if you constrain pieces together, when this piece breaks off, you'll see there'll be more detail inside here. There are tools here to do interior detail, and what this will do is essentially noise up things in the inside. It'll add more detail in here, and then it'll add a little noise. If you do F5, and let's give us a few less pieces to deal with, so we can see the interior a bit better. What it's going to do is it's going to subdivide, and then it'll push a noise through it, which you can change the amplitude. Let's change it, and you can see it'll push a noise through it to help add more detail. I mean, that's fine, that's what you want, but eventually you get to a point when you're like, oh, okay, I've got a lot of noise, but now it still looks like Voronoi. But we're going to do a little hack here. Okay, and before the Voronoi, we are going to do this. So we're going to take a rest position and create a rest position, which is basically an attribute called rest, which matches the point position of the current state. We're going to add a noise. So I like to use a point flop. Call this noise. Let's just use noise. We can use any noise you want. I mean, it doesn't really matter as long as you get the result that you need. We're going to add this to a point position. Just want to promote these parameters, so create input parameters, so that up top here, when we select, we've got a whole bunch of noises here. For ease sake, I just want to clean this up a bit, so I'm going to hide all those things invisibly, make them all invisible, and then I'm going to new folder and call this noise. Accept. And now you've got a nice little noise drop down here. Let's say you want simplex noise, then you want the amplitude to be a little bit less, frequency to be a bit higher. The trick with this is that you've got this here, but it's still got the rest position from here. So it's rest position plus whatever this is, and then you need to set it back. So I'm going to do that, noise it up, fracture it. Maybe I'll noise it a bit more. Let's go crazy, let's do that. Fracture it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to drop down a wrangle. You can do this any way you want, but I like to do it with a wrangle. Set to rest. Okay, and then we're going to say, okay, at P equals V at rest. Essentially what I did here is I divided these interior pieces here, because if you just leave them normally, you can see you get pieces like this, and what's that is actually is the interior faces not having enough information to connect point A to point B. So I divided it, so I'm making a subdivision here, so it'll go around like, and you can see that as soon as I do this, those things pop up, go away. And then I added normals so that all the normals are fixed. If I explode this like this, you can see we've got a nice bit of detail. But you're like, oh, okay, well, that looks pretty much the same. Well, now the trick is with this is that before your rest, you need to subdivide, because the noise, it doesn't have enough information to add noisy detail in here. So you have to subdivide at least once to get nice detail. So let's just do a bilinear one. Let's pump this more, this amplitude like to 10. Okay, maybe 10 is a bit much. But now you can see that these Voronoi pieces are starting to wiggle. But unfortunately, the problem with Voronoi, and this is why Boolean is better, is because when you start to noise things too far to get more detail, things get a little crazy. And this obviously needs to be 3D noise. There we go. So you can see we've got more wiggly detail here in the pieces, more noise and variation. But what you can also see is some of the issues that start to happen when you push your noise values too far. So obviously if I brought this down to 1, some of these things will start to clear up. But essentially, depending on the noise, it's going to push points through other points, fracture, and then try and put it back. And in doing that, you might not get exactly the result that you think you will. So here, you can see as far as you can kind of go. But then things start to break, like over here, because it's obviously got 1 point here and 1 point here, and then it's trying to fracture here and it doesn't have enough information, so then you have to subdivide again to give it more detail. And now this is one of the pitfalls of Voronoi, and why people usually use Voronoi for simple things like this, or like effects that are not so close to camera. What happens when you want more noise and more exterior detail in your sims, but your Voronoi is breaking? Well, that's where booleans come in. With booleans, what you essentially have is an object, which is usually a sealed piece of geometry. You've got a cutter, like for example a grid, and then you boolean, shatter this, put A and B together, and then when you do assemble to create some names and explode, you get that. Okay, and the detail is directly determined by the detail in your cutting piece. So if I were to add 20 here and 20 here, you can see that detail starts to come in there, which is really handy for adding interior detail in here, because all you do is you noise it up. What I can do is I will just take this noise, copy it over, and drop it in here. Okay, now you can see the noise is starting to happen, and what you get for free is the edge starts to be noised up, and now noise plane that it's using to cut. I mean, the amount of detail you can push in here is basically determined by the resolution of this and the size of your noise. Okay, essentially Boolean Fracture is doing exactly that with A and B right here. What's in Boolean Fracture is a bunch of trickery, well, not so much trickery, but here you've got a whole bunch of exposed output groups, and they're called all kinds of strange things, and this is set to solid and blah blah blah, where this Boolean Fracture is stripped all of that down, wrapped it nicely. Interior group is inside, exterior group is outside, it merges with the groups. You got a bunch of promotion things, you can copy attributes if you want or don't want. Usually this Boolean will copy attributes from the Boolean cutter to the interior pieces over here. So if I go and I make a color here, you'll see what I'm talking about. So if I just go and make this red, for example, you'll see that this will now be red inside, but not the exterior, because that had no color applied to it. Probably find that if you do this, it doesn't work, because you have to set copy surface attributes CD. There we go. So here you can limit it and say don't copy all the attributes, or do copy all the attributes, whereas with this you kind of get it natively. But as I said, this setup is kind of in here with a bunch of extra tricks. So inside here, the inside pieces here are renamed inside and outside. For Boolean, it's actually B inside A, so this would be inside, and A only pieces is outside. So with Boolean, you've got a bunch of options. This worked quite nicely because it's just a simple grid with not too much noise on it. Sometimes if you've got a lot of cutting pieces, it's not going to really work out. You have to set this to surface, and then it knows, okay, these are single planes, and then it can cut it more efficiently. Sometimes remove self-iteration. If your pieces are noised up so much that they overlap, it'll like try and solve that problem for you. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, just depends on what kind of things you got going on. So here inside the Boolean Fracture, you can see here it deletes all the attributes except for the ones that you tell it to bring over via this little Python script. It computes connectivity. All these things are just used to help it go into the rigid body solver much easier. I mean, if you're using this, you'll have to set all those things up yourself, like dropping the assemble down. You probably don't even need that with this node. No, you don't. So it's got an assemble in there. It'll set your names, and it'll output some constraints for you and all that. So if you're going to do Boolean fracturing, I suggest using this one. If you don't have this and you're in before 17, I think, then just use the Boolean. We are going to do something a bit more complex. So let's take our squad, scatter. Now with Boolean, what's cool about it is that you don't need so many points. You literally maybe need 10 or 20 at the maximum, and you copy your cutters onto your points. So you copy your cutter onto your points like so, and then on here it basically this copy to points will use normals to orient these cutting geometry. So we just use a random attribute. We say we want N to be randomized, and we want it to be randomized with inside a circle, so that's pointing outwards. Now we drop a Boolean fracture, or normal Boolean shadow if you wish. Grab our original geometry and our points, and then we just want an exploded view so that we can see what's going on, and we hit it. It's going to run fairly fast, I might add, a lot faster than the Voronoi. And now you can see you get all these cool little details, your interior surfaces are all there, it's all wiggled and everything's good. Coming through this, it'll probably work in a sim, but sometimes you'll get these little pieces that might hold up your sim a little bit, but it should be fine. So let's just drop, let's pack this, dot network, packed object, rigid, gravity, round, merge. So okay, so we've got a packed object coming in through a bullet solver with a ground plane and a gravity. I mean, I'm not going to go through rigid bodies too much because that's not what this is about, but I do want to just show you this breakup. Oh, lovely, perfect. So cool. One of the cool things you can do with this is you can pretty much give it any geometry that you want on the inside. And it will run it through and chop up your object or your character or building or whatever it is. Now I'm going to use a VDB spheres. And what's cool about this is that when it creates spheres, it's basically going to try and use the least amount of spheres to fill this object. So where it's got a big volume is going to put one big sphere, and then a little volume and a little sphere, and so on. It's going to drop more and more spheres until these conditions are met or it runs out of space. So for us, what we're going to do, more spheres. And then let's put the ISO offset a little bit outside. It works much better with distance VDB. Now we just have to convert these to polygons. Boolean only cuts with polygons, it doesn't cut with anything else. Pump this U up a bit, and then we can throw that in the fracture. Hit a save. Cool, now you see you've got a whole bunch of little pieces really cheaply. It's cutting things up nicely. The bigger sections of the body have got bigger chunks in it with nice little extra pieces on. Take this noise here, throw it on top, and then you'll start to see crazy little details. With Boolean, because it's not Voronoi, and you don't have to do that rest position nonsense, you'll see there's a lot of little pieces here. And what that's going to do is basically, if you've got an edge, and then another edge comes and overlaps it, there's a little pocket in the middle, so it's going to make a piece in that little pocket. So if you've got a lot of little lines like this with a noise, and that noise is set to be slightly different to each piece, you're going to get lots of little pockets and stuff like that. And that's one of the cool ways you can use booleans to simulate grout or give little shards and extra bits where bigger pieces rub together and stuff like that. Put this through the pack, actually not do the exploded view. We're at 4,800 pieces. Let's see how we go with that on my tiny little laptop. Let's just do the normal view and see how we go. Okay, so here's the sim that we have with the squab. It's literally just dropping down, and there you go. You can see all those little pieces of fracturing. It's nice, I would say, ceramic squab that we've got, probably dropping from maybe 10-20 centimeters from the ground. This is not a rigid body tutorial, so if it were, we would do some constraints and things like that and make things stick together a bit better. But this is literally just to show you the fracturing and the amount of detail. So let me show you the technique I was talking about, where you have one piece and then you offset it for some grout just quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to have that, and then we're just going to copy and transform is fine, and we want two pieces, and then we want a copy attribute there, import primitive attribute. Yes, that's the one. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab from here, we're going to say, what do we want? It's called copy num, I think, as far as I remember. Copy num. We are going to get it from first input, and it is a integer, and then we're going to go integer to float, convert it out, and in this noise, in the offset here, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to add this to float to vector, and add it maybe to the X, doesn't really matter. And now you can see here that if we didn't have it, so now we've got, let's just do color here, and I'll show you the differences from attributes, and we can call it copy num. That's a primitive attribute. So now you can see the two pieces here. That's without the copy, that's with the copy, and you're going to have nice pockets in between here where it's going to cut out a little sliver. Obviously you can tweak this a little bit and you get different pockets and things like that, and then you can fracture that, and then when you put that in your Boolean, you're going to get lots more interesting little pieces. So you'll have a line of the fracture, but then it'll have a little bit of jagged extra pieces, and it simulates that bigger pieces rubbing together and actually breaking little bits of grout or ceramic. Cool, I hope you like this and you learned something about fracturing, something new, something some cool techniques. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to subscribe, and there are a lot more videos on my channel and a lot more Houdini tips and tricks and things like that. Want to leave a comment or let me know what kind of videos you want to see me do, or any interesting topics that you want me to cover, hit me up in the comments, and I will see if I can make a video about it and explain it a little bit more. See you later.